what they're claiming, and gave them the technology to shut down strategically cell phones and websites like Twitter, to make sure they could never gain momentum, to make sure every time they get energy flowing to try to turn the election or try to shut something down, they can effectively shut them down. Because if you can shut down cell phones and you can shut down Twitter, well, you can block that energy, can't you? You just can't do anything. But they had a lot going for them in this green revolution I ran. It didn't work. It didn't work because Russia countered it. Why would Russia counter it? Well, it's the old story. You know, it's just pooty poot. I ain't mad at you or nothing. It just looks like you got too much to do in the planet, and since you obviously don't have that much to do, or you're busy fooling around, you know, you need to be straightening out stuff in the Korean Peninsula, whatnot. But you can't have that much to do, or obviously you don't have your head in the game because you're over here messing around in Iran, and Iran's connected in my backyard, and I just don't feel like letting you mess around there, or I'm having a bad day today, and I don't like you. And the Russians, once again, are just giving everyone fits. You see, he doesn't have to do anything. All he has to do is give someone some technology, give someone a heads up, and he causes problems. Why would Russia want Ahmadinejad in their back pocket? Because believe it or not, if Ahmadinejad goes down, his whole entire agency, all the people around him go down. Mousavi is going to cause one of those, you know, Islamic tribunal type things where, you know, and everything they did wrong in 20 years is going to be an offense to Allah, and they're probably going to all lose their heads. Yeah, you don't want it. If you've been in power for any length of time in a Muslim country and you go down, it's not going to be pretty. At least it never has been. So there's actually some incentive that he wants to save his skin. So Russia, by saving his skin, you know, they own this guy now. I mean, you know, you'd be very thankful if you were Ahmadinejad too. But why would Russia? Well, why not? Why not? Why not? What is Iran critical doing? You know, the funny thing is that Russia's been fooling around in Iran in a long time. And they just sealed their deal with Ahmadinejad, and the Germans are there too. When I hear Putin speak, and I hear Putin go over there and bless German children, and then I hear Ahmadinejad praise Germany and praise the technological innovations historically of Germany and stuff like that, I know who they're speaking for. Yeah, the Germans sit back in this equation, they do nothing, but they exercise a tremendous amount of soft power. So why would Putin Company and everyone he speaks for want Ahmadinejad in power? Well, why not? A bird in the hand's better than one you don't know about. Mousavi's owned by the other side. You don't want him in there. On top of that, Ahmadinejad's just fine with you. Any type of scenario you trip there, you know, let's backtrack a little bit and let me show you how critical Iran is. Iran straddles the Hormuz Straits. The Straits of Hormuz are exactly how it's pronounced. The vast majority of oil coming out of the Saudi Peninsula, coming out of the Middle East, has to go through these straits. Well, Iran can cause havoc there. Iran could basically cause a war there, or a war could be started there, and that war would engulf Anglosphere immediately. If we remember correctly, I explained to you that the central banking in Anglosphere is a private central banking scheme. It's a dream scheme because you're dealing with reserve status currency like the U.S. dollar, and the Bank of England's tied to that as well. U.S. dollar, and the U.S. dollar is backed by oil, or oil is backed by dollars. They have a symbiotic relationship, and so are all the other commodities, but the big one's oil. Everything on this planet needs oil. Everything you're sitting in and around was either made with oil, or made as a byproduct of oil, or made with a machine that needed oil. So you have to control oil, you have to control oil production, and they did not diversify into Russia. Why? They don't have a good relationship with Russia, do they? No. So by understanding conflict and scarcity, right? We're back to conflict and scarcity. You know that wherever there's going to be scarcity, something like oil, there's going to be potential conflict. And so by knowing your enemy's banking structure, you can really start hemming them up. And the Straits of Hormuz hems up Anglosphere, if they got to worry about that, because guess what? If that shuts down, most of the oil is not getting through. What happens to Anglosphere? You're done. You're over with. Your history, your banking could be history. It's like a chain reaction. You have a dollar tied to oil, oil's tied to dollars, and you got to be there. Now, could Anglosphere on its own, could the United States on its own clear out the Straits of Hormuz and take on Iran? Well, yeah, sure they could. On their own, who knows what Russia sold them? You know, look up Sunbird missiles. Who knows what they're doing? Who knows what kind of mines they sold them? You know, a little speedboat with explosives can hammer a destroyer if it's done correctly. You're limited depending on how you want to attack. Asymmetrical warfare in the water is very effective against. It's just a nightmare scenario. But they have to have that open. That has to be open for Anglosphere, period, because we don't have any oil. It's a flawed strategy, isn't it? And by understanding that, now what does Russia care if the Straits of Hormuz goes up in flames? What's bad about it for Russia? Nothing. Oil price double, triple, good. Oil, who has all the oil? Russia. Russia would be the only conflict-free zone with any oil flowing. Well, that's wonderful for Russia, isn't it? So it's kind of funny how things are lining up, and that's what happened. Someone's getting lined up. And let me put it to you in another way. Many of you remember when Georgia went up. Russia went in there and split up Georgia. When that happened, the Anglo New World Order was officially dead. Yeah, you didn't hear that announced on Fox News. You didn't hear that announced by Biden. Biden was over there yelling and screaming that the Russians are nothing, that they're going to be nothing, yada, yada, yada. Meanwhile, the Russians totally have destroyed his New World Order. They don't have a New World Order, because as soon as Georgia went up in flames, they demanded NATO respond. You see, any member of NATO can veto. If a member of NATO vetoes, one member of NATO vetoes in that situation, NATO can't go in. They called for NATO to go in. NATO voted. The Germans voted it down. The Germans voted against going into Georgia. All the New World Order at that very moment came crumbling down. Your enemy's New World Order was officially annihilated right then and there. So out of desperation, they saw things lining up against them, a little late if you ask me, in Iran. So they put together a pretty good package. The package was panic, because you're in trouble. You're in trouble if someone tips the Straits of Hormuz. But let's go about it another direction. Let me give you what you see is what you get. Right now, people running Anglosphere will tell you that Russia's nothing, Russia's no big deal, and we have all this power in Eastern Europe, yada, yada, yada. Does Eastern Europe really do anything for the United States or Great Britain? Does it mean anything to us? No, we don't have any missiles there. If we put missiles there, Russia would simply counter it. I mean, we don't have any missiles there now. We don't have enough NATO forces to do anything there. The Germans have already vetoed Georgia. So basically, we're in Russia's backyard kind of hanging out there, and Russia's moving around doing whatever they want to do. But what they're really telling you is that they have zero leverage over Russia. If you want to tell me, or if you want anyone to, I mean, you just look at the situation. What the people in Anglosphere are telling you is that they're either unwilling, they're basically trying to say they're unwilling to trade Georgia and the Ukraine for the Straits of Hormuz. Does that make any sense to anyone listening to this? You're unwilling to trade Georgia, the Ukraine, for your life? It doesn't make any sense. Something else is going on here. What it tells me is that Russia's not willing, doesn't need to negotiate. They don't need them anymore. They're lining them up. Or there's an actual third option. People within Anglosphere and the Russians are lining up a group, lining someone up that, you know, for this end game that I'm sure you guys have heard about, this big end game going on. Well, that's where it's lining up, right there. The Straits of Hormuz are critical to oil. Oil is critical to our reserve status currency and to Anglosphere because we don't have any. Oil is not critical to Russia because they have tons of it. But basically, all Russia has to do is yawn, set off the scenario, all the Straits of Hormuz go up, we've got to go in there, and it is going to be a disaster. It is going to be the largest war disaster anyone's ever seen. In my opinion, do I think it's going to happen? Yes. Yes, Iran and Israel will obliviate each other. Watch.